How many husbands have heard their wives say, "If you love me, you'll let me do this"? That sentence really hit home for me during what was supposed to be a romantic evening for our 5th anniversary. That's when everything started to unravel. My gorgeous 30-year-old wife, Evan, dropped a bombshell. She wanted to sleep with other men. She didn't sugarcoat it. I had planned an elegant dinner at one of our favorite upscale spots, white tablecloths, a good wine list, the works. I even splurged on a diamond necklace for her. I spent nearly $1,000. She'd been dropping hints about it since her birthday, but something was off that night. Our usually easygoing conversation felt stiff, and Evelyn seemed jittery. Her gaze flitted around the room like she was scanning for someone. Normally, she'd be looking right into my eyes, but tonight she couldn't seem to do that. Instead, her focus shifted to her wine glass, the table, anything but me. Finally, as we sat with another glass of wine after the main course, she came out with it. "Honey, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's been bothering me for a while and I can't ignore it." I put my wine glass down, bracing myself. "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped to that low, serious tone she used when things got heavy. My first thought was that she was ready to discuss starting a family. We'd talked about it several times over the years, delaying kids until we hit certain career milestones and saved up a more substantial nest egg. Now that we had achieved those goals, I was eager to take that step. But what came next wasn't about children. "Honey, I want to do something that might be hard for you to accept right now, but it's something I've given a lot of thought to, and it's Evelyn said it was important for her to explore her life outside of our relationship. She needs some freedom to figure out who she is, and she believes that will make her a better wife for me." I was floored, confused, shocked, and angry all at once. "What are you talking about?" I said, my hands flat on the table. She was looking at me intently, and I was confused. I still wouldn't meet her gaze. "I want to explore relationships outside of us, Ben," she said quietly. "I need your understanding beforehand so it won't cause any issues between us." My heart started pounding, and my neck felt tight. I could feel my heart was racing. I asked, "What do you mean by other relationships?" I was trying to keep calm. "They could be with different people," she replied, avoiding specifics. My confusion turned into something darker. My breath came faster. "Please be more specific," I demanded. "I think I might want to see other men," she said. "You want to have an affair, and you're asking for my permission before you run off and do it," I said, my voice getting louder. I could sense some heads turning at nearby tables. "Please keep your voice down, Ben." That's when it hit me. She chose a public place so I wouldn't cause a scene. She set me up. My stomach twisted into knots. I felt sick. The only thing I could ask was why. "Why would you want to do this?" "I just need space to figure myself out. That's all," she said softly. "Figure yourself out? What does that mean?" "Evelyn, are you saying you want to have sex with other men? Are you planning to leave me?" "I'm not leaving. There are reasons I need to do this, but I love you deeply. You're my soulmate. I still want us to have a family and grow old together, but right now I need to experience something different. I just want to try something different. If I do, I swear I'll be a better wife for it. It's only for a few months, then I'll be yours again, I promise." This was a nightmare. My wife, the woman I had been married to for 5 years, dropped a bomb during our anniversary dinner. She wanted to sleep with other men. I was supposed to be okay with it, to sit by and wait for her to come back as if nothing had happened, and somehow this was supposed to make her a better wife. I was too stunned to speak. I was too shocked to even think straight. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I stood up, placed my napkin carefully on the table, picked up my wine glass, and drained it. Then, without a word, I turned and walked out. I picked up my wine glass and drained it. Then, without a word, I turned and walked out. "Ben, where are you going?" I heard her call after me. I don't know, I muttered. You should take a cab home. The pain spread from the back of my skull to the front, and time became meaningless. The next morning, I woke up in the car, disoriented. I had no idea where I was. I got out, stretched, and yawned, trying to shake off the fog. For a second, I thought maybe the events of last night were just a nightmare. But then reality hit me. I woke up in the car, disoriented. I needed to figure out what to do before I went home. First things first, I needed to relieve myself. After taking care of that in some nearby bushes, I got back in the car and started driving. I was desperate for a cup of coffee. I found I stopped at a small diner and got breakfast to go with my coffee. My mind was racing as I tried to come up with a plan. I couldn't just let Evelyn sleep with other men. That would be the end of our marriage. As I drove, I began to wonder if she was even the woman I thought she was. Maybe she was going through a rough patch, fantasizing about a life that wasn't real. I had no idea. I'm no psychiatrist, just a husband trying to make sense of everything. I checked my phone and realized it had been off since last night. When I turned it back on, there were several missed calls and text messages from Evelyn. She wanted to know where I was, if I was okay, and when I'd be coming home. I wasn't ready to deal with her yet, so I ignored the messages for now. Over several cups of coffee and some eggs, I started to form a rough plan. It was time to head back home. I had missed calls and text messages from Evelyn. She wanted to know where I was, if I was okay, and when I'd be coming home. I wasn't ready to deal with her yet, so I ignored the messages for now. I started to form a rough plan over several cups of coffee and some eggs. It was time to head back home when I pulled into the driveway, and Evelyn was already at the front door, rushing out to meet me. Honey, where have you been? I've been worried sick. You know, the whole exploring yourself thing you brought up last night. I brushed past her and headed upstairs, eager to get out of the suit I'd spent the night in under the hot water. I tried to organize my thoughts, rehearsing some of what I wanted to say. I still couldn't make sense of it. Was this just her? Was she trying to see how committed I was? I had no idea what she was thinking. I had loved her, I had married her, and we had built a life together. We had a beautiful wedding and then a great trip to Europe. I had never even thought about being with another woman, much less cheating on her. But now it seemed like she didn't want to hold herself to the same standard. Thankfully, we didn't have kids, and after this, maybe we never would. Everything was up in the air. What happened over the next few days and weeks would determine everything. After I got dressed in fresh clothes, I went downstairs. I went down to the kitchen, and Evelyn was sitting at the island watching me intently. I grabbed a cup of coffee along with a notepad and pen, trying to appear calm despite the chaos inside me. I sat down across from her. Evelyn, tell me again why you want to start having relationships outside. In our marriage, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed. I need to feel validated as a woman right now. I don't feel like my needs are being met. I have to figure out what those needs are so you don't even know what your needs are. To figure that out, you want to leave me right now. Ben, I'm not. I'm not going anywhere. I just need the freedom to manage my own schedule and do things when it suits me. When do you plan on starting this exploration? I asked, my voice betraying my frustration. I need to know if you agree with this. Evelyn, I don't agree. I don't agree. When we got married, we promised each other we'd be partners for life. Now you want to start seeing other people. What am I supposed to think? It sounds like you're looking for a way out of our marriage. It's not like that, she said, her voice softening. I need to find a connection. We haven't had one in a while. It's been a while since we've had fun together. I don't feel appreciated anymore. I practically choked on the word appreciated. Everything I do is for you. I've been working hard so we can have the life we talked about, buying this house, planning for a family, and now you want to toss it aside? I was getting pretty wound up, so I took a deep breath to calm down. I decided to cut to the chase and ask, "Are you planning on sleeping with other men?" She hesitated for a moment. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe if it feels like the right thing to do. If you're planning on cheating on me, I need to know. Is it cheating if I don't know about it?" I clenched my jaw and took another long sip of my coffee, trying to keep my cool. "Let me get this straight. You're going to meet other men, date them, and sleep with them. Is that right? You're going to do all of this while still living here with me? Is that right?" "It's not that simple. I'm sorry, but it seems pretty straightforward to me. What happens with us during all of this? Do we just hit pause on our marriage while you explore? Are you still going to be with me?" "Of course, Ben. We're still a family. I love you and I want that to continue. This is just something I need to do for myself." "How often are you planning to do this? Every weekend, twice a week, every night?" "I don't know yet." "Why are you so fixated on that?" "I need to figure it out. I need to figure out what I'm going to do while you're off with your new boyfriends." "I don't have a boyfriend, Ben. At least not yet." I took a deep breath, trying to hold myself together. I felt like I was going to snap. "Evelyn, I just need to understand. Have you really made up your mind? Do you realize what this could do to our marriage?" Evelyn nodded, but didn't actually say anything. I could tell she hadn't really thought through how I might feel about all of this. It was clear that she hadn't considered that I might have. I said I wanted a say in what she wanted to do. Then she dropped the line that would haunt me: "If you love me, you'll let me do this." I shot back immediately. "If you love me, Evelyn, you wouldn't even be considering this." That was my line in the sand, honey. I've already made up my mind. You're not going to change it. She said, her voice firm, and there it was, the ultimatum that would alter everything between us. From that moment on, our marriage was different. Evelyn didn't see. She seemed to grasp the idea that cheating, even with the warning I gave, was still cheating and would break our marriage. Now it was time to put my own plan into motion. I said, "If this is what you want to do, there are some conditions that aren't negotiable." I laid out what she'd need to do if she was going to sleep around. "First, you'll have to move out. I'm not living under the same roof while you're off dating and sleeping with other men. If you thought you'd be bringing them here, think again. That's not happening." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "Why not stay with that friend of yours, Sophia? You've been spending a lot of time with her lately, haven't you? I heard she's divorced and living alone. Call her and ask if you can crash there for a while. If that doesn't work, you can rent a short. You'll be responsible for all your own expenses, rent, utilities, and so on." Evelyn, a third-grade teacher, earned a decent salary. I, on the other hand, worked as a forensic auditor for a large firm and made good money with bonuses every year. From what she had said last night, I was starting to think maybe I wasn't giving her what she needed from our relationship for the first time since this conversation started. Evelyn lifted her head and met my eyes. She seemed to think I was giving in. "Evelyn, let me ask you this. After all this, are you planning on coming back to me after you're done sleeping with other men? Do you expect to come back and resume our marriage like nothing happened?" She said, her voice filled with confidence, "I love you, Ben. You're my husband. I want us to have a family together. What am I supposed to do while you're out sleeping around? Just sit at home twiddling my thumbs waiting for you to come back? Do you think that's fair to me? Have you even considered what this is going to do to me?" she said, pausing for a moment. "I want you to be my husband, Ben, and only you. What happens while I'm away won't mean anything. When I come back, I'll still want to be with you and have a family." It was almost laughable. She honestly believed that sleeping with other men wouldn't affect us. She seemed satisfied that I wasn't going to let her bring her lovers into our home. She saw that as some kind of victory. "Fine," I said, standing up. "Figure out where you're going to live. Let me know by the end of the week, But for now, move your things into the spare bedroom. I'm not sharing a bed with you while you're planning this exploration. It feels like you're already halfway out the door, so why pretend?" Evelyn didn't answer. I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was starting to realize I wasn't going to let her do this without consequences. Maybe she was surprised I had asked her to move out of our bed. But what did she expect? Did she really think I would let her sleep with other men and then come home to me like nothing had changed? No way. I had a feeling that her friend Sophia had something to do with this idea. You know, Sophia, another teacher at the same school, had been caught cheating on her husband a couple of years ago and ended up divorced. From what I knew, Sophia had been sleeping with multiple men and got kicked out of the house for it. She was 35, attractive, and had a reputation for being easy with her affections. I suspected she'd been filling Evelyn's head with she was thinking about exploring herself before we settled down and had kids. But if Evelyn explored too much, there wouldn't be any kids. Not with me anyway. What there would be was a divorce. I got up and began to walk away. Is that what you want me to do, Ben? You want me to move out? Evelyn asked. Yeah, that's it for now, I said. Don't get me wrong, Evelyn. I don't want this. We promised each other monogamy when we got married. You're planning to break that promise. What do you expect me to do? Just sit by quietly while you sleep with other men if you want an open marriage. Then I'll have to play by the same rules. She didn't respond. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the door. Ben, where are you going? She called after me. I'm not sure yet. Don't forget to move your things to the spare room and start figuring out where you're going to live. You don't get to cheat on me while still living here. I walked out, slamming the door harder than I meant to. If it came to it, I'd be willing to leave myself, but since she was the one, she started this whole thing, so she should be the one to suffer the consequences. If Sophia was behind this, she could take Evelyn in. I had to fight the urge to drive straight to Sophia's place and confront her. I wanted to blame her, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Monday morning came, and I left for work before Evelyn was even awake. I needed to focus on my plan because if she was truly set on following through with this, I wasn't going to stand for it. She may have convinced herself that this was all perfectly reasonable, but I wasn't going to be the fool waiting for her to come home after sleeping with other men. The first step was to call my lawyer. He usually handled routine matters for me, like real estate, legal documents, and wills. Divorce wasn't his specialty, but he referred me to someone at his firm who could help. My appointment with the divorce attorney was scheduled for that afternoon. Meeting with her was tough, but she was sharp and experienced. She explained the legalities of our situation. I realized that I didn't have to go on an all-out war. I wasn't interested in dragging out a bitter divorce. A 50-50 split of our assets seemed fair to me. Neither of us had much when we got married, and we both worked hard to build a comfortable life together. There was no point in fighting over things, especially when I just wanted to move on from the woman who was betraying me. For now, though we weren't filing anything, this was just preparation and contingency planning for when I had undeniable proof that Evelyn. The week dragged by slowly. I avoided home as much as possible, spending my evenings at the gym to work off the stress. Evelyn, on the other hand, seemed to be spending all her time with Sophia. By Thursday, she announced that she'd be staying at Sophia's place for a couple of weeks until she found something more permanent. I knew exactly what that meant. Sophia's place was the perfect spot for her to meet her new boyfriends without having to worry about me. Then on Saturday, Evelyn officially left. She packed up her things and loaded them into her car. Just before she drove away, she paused by the door. Ben, I don't want to go, she said. Are you sure we can't work something out? I still love you, and I want our marriage to be better. I shook my head, feeling frustrated. Evelyn, if you really loved me and wanted to make our marriage better, you wouldn't be doing this. I want you to stay, but I'm not going to sit back and watch while you sleep with other men. I love you, but I won't. I can't accept this. Come with me to marriage counseling. Let's try to figure out what went wrong. If you won't do that, I don't know what else to say. You might as well go with that. I watched her finish loading her car as soon as she was gone. I went to the hardware store to buy new locks for the house. I changed 3 locks and reset the garage door code on Saturday night and all of Sunday. It felt like torture. I just sat there, staring at the walls, hoping she'd realize how wrong this was and come back home. She didn't come back. The next week was rough. I started running and going to the gym to cope with the sadness and frustration. I even thought about going to her and begging her to come home, but I reminded myself that she'd left our marriage for other men. I spent hours reading articles online about why people cheat. I was shocked to learn that nearly 40% of married people cheat, and even more shocked to find that most couples stay together. Despite it all, many couples simply tolerate infidelity as long as it's kept discreet. Others rationalize it as a way to keep the marriage intact for the sake of the kids. I read about wives who cheat, claiming they love their husbands but seek excitement elsewhere. They say home life is routine and draining, and the excitement they crave is found with their lovers, who don't talk about kids or chores right after sex. The idea that this kind of betrayal could somehow save a marriage was baffling to me. Some women even said they cheated to save their relationships. I didn't understand how that logic worked, but it made me sick just thinking about it. Marriage is complicated, sure, but for me the foundation is monogamy. If you can't commit to that, you shouldn't be married. Open marriages, polyamory, none of it works in the long run. Emotional bonds form, feelings get hurt, and most of the time these marriages end in divorce. Anyway, there's also the ever-present risk of diseases. No, thank you. That's not for me. I started questioning myself. Had I pushed her away by not paying enough attention to her? Had I been so focused on building a life for us that I'd forgotten to nurture the marriage? Maybe I don't know, but I did know one thing. I was devastated that she had left me to pursue other men. She claimed to love me, but her actions. She said otherwise, and I didn't see how this would improve our relationship. The following week was just like the last. I never called her, and Evelyn only texted me once to ask if I could forward her mail. That was it. No sign that she wanted to fix anything between us. It was all business. She was moving on with her plan, finding new men to sleep with, while I sat here wondering how everything I even thought about following her just to see who she was meeting and where she was going. But every time I drove by Sophia's apartment, I kept going. I couldn't do that to myself. I knew that if she came back, it had to be her choice. Otherwise, she would never truly be mine again. But with each passing day, it felt less likely that she was coming back at all. The longer Evelyn stayed, the less likely it seemed. The longer she stayed away, the less I wanted her back. It had been a month since she moved out, and with barely any communication between us, she showed up at the house one afternoon unannounced. When her key didn't work, she rang the doorbell and knocked on the door. I opened it, greeting her with a neutral expression. "Evelyn, what brings you here today?" I asked calmly. "Honey, Mikey doesn't seem to be working." "What's the problem?" She said, clearly puzzled, "That's because I changed the locks." I replied, keeping my voice steady, "I came to pick up a few things I forgot when I moved in with Sophia." Once again, she wasn't here for me, just her things. It was business as usual for her. My pain. My feelings. None of it seemed to register. I was just an obstacle in her path. She was an obstacle in her own path. How could she be so blind or deluded to think I wouldn't care about her sleeping with other men and then expect me to welcome her back with open arms? "There are some boxes in the garage with your stuff." I gathered it up from around the house. She looked confused. "Why would you do that, honey? I'm coming home in a few months. There's no need to pack everything." I stepped aside and led her into the house. It was still half hers after all. We walked to the garage, where a dozen or so boxes were neatly stacked, ready for her to take. She stared at them for a moment, then looked back at me. "How long are you planning to stay with Sophia?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Sophia's been great, Evelyn replied. I'll be staying with her for a few more months, then I'll come back. I'll be back and be a better wife to you. We can finally start our family. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Did she really believe that? Did she think that by sleeping with other men, she'd somehow be a better wife and more prepared to be a mother? The twisted logic she was operating under was mind-boggling. I couldn't help but wonder how much of it had come from Sophia. But I had my own ideas about what was going on. Have you found a boyfriend yet? I asked casually. Evelyn blushed deeply, her face turning crimson. She started rummaging through the boxes, avoiding eye contact. Sophia and I have been on a few dates with some guys from the club we go to, but that's all, she said quietly. I pressed, wanting her to admit what I already knew. Her face stayed red. She started digging through the boxes, and it was clear she was uncomfortable. I left her in the garage and went back inside to grab a cup of coffee and sit down with the newspaper. A few minutes later, she came out of the garage with a large bag of her things. She paused in the kitchen, taking in the spotless countertops and clean floors. I could see the surprise on her face. She probably expected the house to be in a different state. I'd expected to find the house in disarray, with dirty dishes piled up and laundry everywhere. Instead, it was immaculate. I'd hired a maid service to come in 3 times a week. The house was in perfect order, which was a stark contrast to the state of our marriage. Is there anything else you need, Evelyn? I asked, looking up from my paper. She hesitated, clearly trying to get a sense of what was happening in her absence. Honey, have you been okay since I moved in with you? Sophia, she asked, sounding cautious. I'm fine. I've been busy with work and travel. We've met a lot of new people. We usually grab a beer and a burger afterward. Between the exercise and all the stress you caused, I've lost 15 pounds in the last few weeks. It's probably the only thing that kept me from losing my mind. That's nice, she said, trying to sound casual. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was curious if I had been meeting other women. She drove away. I knew she was probably. She was starting to realize that her plan wasn't going as she expected. She likely thought I'd be sitting at home pining away for her while she enjoyed her newfound freedom. But now she had to wonder if I might just meet someone new. Maybe her idea of finding a boyfriend to give her the attention I supposedly wasn't giving her could backfire in a big way. I learned later that Evelyn had been dating 2 guys from the club she and Sophia frequented, had already slept with both of them a few times, but it wasn't what she had hoped for. Neither man was interested in anything beyond the occasional hookup. After a few hours with her, they'd leave happy to be done with their good time. Both were married men just looking for a fling. Nothing serious. Evelyn was just a temporary distraction for them. A pump and dump by the two. By the time we got to the end of the month, I knew our marriage was over. Evelyn hadn't contacted me in weeks, and it was clear she wasn't thinking about me or our relationship. She was fully committed to her new lifestyle, and she wasn't interested in coming home, even if she did decide to return. There would be conditions, and even then, I wasn't sure I'd take her back. I found out she'd taken a vacation to the Dominican Republic with one of her boyfriends during the school break. They spent time on the beach, working on their tans and doing other things. It seemed like she was living out a fantasy, not making our marriage stronger. She was convinced that I was a terrible husband who neglected her, driving her into the arms of other men. Meanwhile, Evelyn's reputation was starting to crumble. Her family had begun to ask questions. Evelyn's mother called me after finding out about her trip to the Caribbean with another man. She thought we'd had a fight and separated. I told her the truth. Evelyn had left me for other men. She didn't believe me at first, but I told her to talk to Evelyn herself. So her mother did. Evelyn, why did you leave your home? What's going on with you and Ben? Is he hurting you? Her mother asked, sounding concerned. No, Mom, Evelyn replied. It's not like that. He doesn't give me the kind of excitement I need from a man right now. I don't feel desirable around him. I need to feel wanted right now. I don't feel attractive to him, so I have to find that feeling somewhere else. I just want to have a bit of fun before Ben and I start a family. Then after a few months, I'll go back to him. If you appreciate me more, everything will be fine. You'll see. Evelyn, honey, don't you see that if you're with other men, Ben isn't going to take you back? Cheating on him is a sure way to end your marriage. Don't you understand that? I know Ben loves me. Evelyn insisted that I need to do this. I'll come back home in a few months, maybe a year at most, and then we'll have babies. I really need to get up and go home now, or there won't be a marriage to come back to. You won't have a husband waiting for you, and there certainly won't be any babies with him. Do you understand? I know what I'm doing. Mom, Ben loves me, and he'll wait for me, but even her mother couldn't get through to her while Evelyn was off convincing herself that everything would magically fall into place. I had decided it was time to start thinking about my own future. 3 months had passed since she moved out, and it was clear that waiting around wasn't getting me anywhere. I decided it was time to move on. I'd been keeping myself busy with work, the gym, cycling, and sleep, but that routine wasn't enough. I needed something different. I needed to reclaim my life. I decided to ask one of the women from my cycling group out on a date. It wasn't about rushing into anything serious. I just needed some company and a break from the monotony that had been my life since Evelyn left. Part of me still wished she'd come to her senses and come back home, but I had to face reality. She wasn't the same woman I'd married. She was too caught up in this freedom she thought she needed, chasing after validation and excitement that had supposedly been missing from our marriage. When I approached Emma, one of the women in the group, I tried to keep it casual. I didn't want to seem desperate or like I was just trying to fill a void. People in the group knew I was separated from my wife, and I suspected some even knew Evelyn was dating other men. It's not like our city was that big, and gossip tends to travel. So when I asked Emma if she'd like to go out for a drink and a bite to eat, I was surprised when she agreed. I wanted to keep things laid back, nothing too formal or heavy. I planned for us to go kayaking at the lake. I hadn't kayaked in a few years, but I was confident I still knew what I was doing. Emma had never kayaked before, but she seemed excited to give it a try. The date turned out even better than I expected. Emma loved kayaking, and we spent a good 3 hours on the water, covering about 10 miles. Afterward, we headed to a relaxed restaurant for some food and drinks. I ordered a steak with fries and enjoyed a local craft beer. I had a local craft beer while Emma had a glass of white wine and a pasta dish. It was relaxed, no pressure, just what I needed. After dinner, we grabbed ice cream from a stand on the waterfront boardwalk. We finished the night with a leisurely stroll along the shore. The evening felt easy, a welcome change from the tension that had filled my life recently. After driving Emma home, I told her I had a wonderful time. I was planning to give her a polite kiss on the cheek, but she leaned in and kissed me right on the lips. It was unexpected but great. I didn't want to seem overly eager, so I decided to wait until the Tuesday cycle meetup to ask her out again. When we met, she surprised me by saying that she thought I hadn't had a good time because I hadn't called. I quickly reassured her, telling her the exact opposite. I'd had a fantastic time and really enjoyed being with her. We made plans for Saturday. I asked her out again on Saturday to play golf. I had read online that there's a fine line when it comes to communication. Texting or calling too much can make you seem needy, which tends to push people away. So I sent Emma a text on Friday confirming our plans and letting her know I was excited about our golf date. I also gave her the option of either meeting me at the golf club or having me pick her up. She asked me to pick her up, and we settled on an early afternoon. We had a great time on the golf course. Neither of us was particularly skilled, but that wasn't the point. We were just having fun together. Instead of going out, we had dinner at my place. I grilled some steaks, we opened a bottle of wine, and it was a relaxed, casual night. When it got late, I offered to drive her home, but she took my car keys, set them on the counter, and asked to go to the bedroom. The next morning, I woke up with Emma beside me, her arm draped across me. She was gorgeous. long dark hair, striking green eyes, and flawless skin. There was a small scar on her chin from a bicycle accident, but it only added character to her already beautiful face. She was about 5 feet 11 inches and slender yet toned, in incredible shape. She worked as a pediatric nurse at the hospital, and everything about her exuded warmth and compassion. From the moment I met her, I was drawn to her magnetism. We had breakfast on the patio, and soon the conversation turned to more serious topics. We moved the conversation to the patio, where we discussed more serious topics, including my situation with Evelyn. Emma wanted to know what my plans were before she could invest emotionally. It was a fair question. No woman wants to waste her time with a man who might take his estranged wife back any day. I told Emma about the strange way Evelyn had left, and she seemed to confirm what I had already suspected. Evelyn wasn't coming back. Emma's response gave me the push I needed. To move forward with my plan by Monday morning, I called my lawyer and asked her investigator to look into just how many men Evelyn was sleeping with before I proceeded with the divorce papers. It turned out that Evelyn had been dating a steady stream of married men, partying at Sophia's apartment after nights out at bars and clubs. 2 weeks later, Evelyn was officially served with divorce papers. That night, she showed up at the house clutching. I opened the door to find Evelyn standing there with a large brown envelope in her hand. She looked distressed. "What brings you here tonight, honey?" she asked. "Someone delivered these papers to me today." "Why did you file for divorce?" "I told you I'd be back soon," I replied. "I was even thinking about coming home this week. We can start trying for that baby we talked about." I gestured for her to come inside and sit down in the kitchen. "It's a little too late for that, Evelyn," I said. "I told you when you left that. I didn't want you to go, but you went anyway. I told you I needed to figure out who I am to feel good about myself," she said, pleading. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "So, do you feel good about yourself now? Have you validated yourself as a woman? Have you explored your sexuality enough? Have you found enough new relationships? Have you had your fill of excitement? Have you gotten plenty of big dicks in your glory hole and mouth?" I could feel the anger boiling over because from where I'm standing here, and it sure seems like you've been busy. You barely even contacted me after you left. Not even a call on my birthday. And you were too busy screwing some boyfriend in the Dominican Republic to call your mother on Mother's Day. Have you spent this entire time on your back letting random men screw you? Evelyn's face was flushed, but she pressed on. "Honey, I love you. I can see that maybe I went too far. But I'm ready to come home now." "No," I said flatly. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. I thought you were leaving. I'm still your wife, Ben, and this is still my home. I'm coming home. I'll get my things from Sophia's place and be back in a few hours." I crossed my arms, my tone colder now. "No, you're not. Did you even bother to read through the documents in that package toward the back? You'll see a judge's order stating that you're not allowed within 500 feet of this house until the divorce is finalized. Right now, you're technically. By just standing here, I'm violating that order, but I'm not going to make a fuss. You need to leave. We'll handle everything else in court." Evelyn stood there in stunned silence, holding the envelope like it was some kind of lifeline that had suddenly snapped. Finally, she nodded slowly and turned to leave. Her steps were heavy as she walked back to her car. As she drove away, I watched from the doorway, feeling a strange sense of relief. The nightmare was ending. For the first time, I could see a future for myself. After a long time, I could see a future for myself without Evelyn in it. Evelyn was finally beginning to understand that I meant every word of our wedding vows, including the ones about love, honor, cherish, and faithfulness. She might have thought this house meant something to me, but I made it clear it didn't. If she wanted it, that was fine with me. The mortgage was almost paid off, so my half was worth around $150. For that amount, it could be hers if she didn't want to buy me out. We'd sell it and split the proceeds. It was simple, but one thing was for sure, she wasn't moving back in, not while I was still living here. I walked to the door, closed it firmly behind her, and locked it. A month later, we managed to avoid a courtroom battle and settled the divorce quietly. Evelyn got half of everything, which she was legally entitled to. The house was sold, and I moved on with my life. She, on the other hand, returned to her new routine. I later heard from a mutual acquaintance. A friend of hers who teaches at a charter school told her to keep her personal life under wraps. Some of the parents had heard that she was involved with multiple men and weren't happy about it. The complaints mostly came from the mothers, who were pretty vocal about not wanting a woman with loose morals teaching their children. Ironically, some of the fathers might have been the very men she was sleeping with. Not long after I heard that Evelyn was diagnosed with a sexually transmitted disease, I heard that she'd been fired. It was a bit of a threat, but it did mean no sex for about a year. That wouldn't have been such a big deal except for the fact that she was also pregnant. One of her lovers had managed to get her pregnant. No surprise there, considering she'd been careless with her birth control pills. Thanks to her constant drinking, she hadn't insisted on protection either. The father of the baby was never officially identified, but rumors pointed to one of the married teachers at her school. As for me, my divorce was finalized and I was free of Evelyn for good. Now a year has passed since all the madness with her began. I've moved on to a new house, received a promotion at work, and most importantly, Emma and I are living together. We're happy to announce 2 major milestones. 1, we're getting married this summer, and 2, we're expecting our first child by Christmas. That's the end of it.